Discover the incredible transformation, 30 days to endure pain and unleash your true strength. Crestview was a town where dreams once danced in vibrant colors, but now it lay cracked and faded, a mere shadow of its former self. Sarah felt the weight of desperation pressing against her chest as she gazed at the peeling walls of her modest home. 3 generations of laughter echoed through the empty halls, but today's silence loomed ominously. With 2 children to feed and the landlord's scrawled eviction notice plastered on her door, she had never felt more alone. Each day blurred together as she served diners at the local cafe, her heart breaking every time the bills piled up higher than her meager paycheck. Is this the American dream? She wondered through gritted teeth, purposefully stuffing the diary that had belonged to her late grandfather, a World War II veteran who had fought against insurmountable odds, under her pillow. She had brushed it off for too long, but the moment was coming. One stormy night, as raindrops splattered against her window, Sarah felt an uncontrollable urge to open the diary. Its pages were yellowed, a time capsule of emotions. As she flipped through the handwritten notes, his words began to swirl around her like a warm embrace. They spoke of resilience, bravery, and the unbreakable bonds of family love. Tears streamed down her cheeks, igniting a spark of determination within her. In 30 days, I will change things, she whispered to the empty room. With newfound purpose, she signed up to volunteer at the local food bank. The shadows lurking in the corners of her soul began to shift as she engaged with her neighbors, listening to their stories of struggle. There was the single father, a weary look in his eyes, and the elderly couple living on fixed incomes, their hands trembling as they clutched bags of essentials. Each encounter reminded her their pain was her pain, their sadness echoed within her. Together, these stories created an invisible thread, weaving a tapestry of solidarity. Yet, just as Sarah began to feel that sense of connection, a familiar tension arose. Her brother, a successful businessman, scrutinized her efforts with disdain. "You're smothering yourself in this helping nonsense," he scolded over dinner, his words slicing through her heart, skepticism weighing down her dreams. Straining to understand each other felt like battling an invisible wall. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with her heart pounding. Sarah knew what had to be done. She took the stage at a town hall gathering, raw emotion pulsing through her veins. With quivering lips, she shared the weight of her story, an unfiltered view into her struggles and those of her community. "We are not lazy, we are worthy." Her voice rang through the room, capturing attention, the audience leaning forward as if drawn by an invisible force. But lingering doubt twisted in her stomach. Would her brother see his sister's worth? Or would divisions deepen like the cracks in Crestview's streets? Silence hung thick as hope sparked and hope flickered, leaving a single question vibrating in the air: can Sarah unite her fractured family and inspire her community, or would their struggles drown out the possibilities of a brighter tomorrow? The room fell silent, a heavy stillness that felt like a tightening knot in Sarah's throat. Faces around her shifted from curiosity to concern, their eyes searching for the truth behind her fierce words. She held her breath, gripping the edges of the podium, wishing for something to pierce the tension. Then a familiar voice broke through, sharp and skeptical. "You think a few motivational speeches are enough to change anything, Sarah?" Her brother's words sliced through the air like a cold wind, chilling the warmth she had just begun to feel. The audience turned, their expressions mixed, and Sarah's heart sank. Would he never understand? But Sarah stood firm. She could feel the eyes of the community on her, filled with a blend of hope and uncertainty, and she couldn't back down. "It's more than that. It's about us, coming together to lift one another up." She glanced around the room, recognizing faces that mirrored her struggles. "We can't afford to wait for someone else to fix this. If we don't stand united, we'll just keep fading away. A gentle murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, and for the first time, doubt hesitated at the edges. Her brother, arms crossed and lips pressed tight, was still the wall standing before her. You believe they will just rally behind this idea? It's naive, Sarah. You'll just end up disappointed. Is it naive to want something better? To believe in each other? She shot back, her voice rising, fortifying her conviction. Anger and resolution surged within her, sparking a fire she didn't know she possessed. Every story I've heard, the father working 2 jobs, the elderly couple struggling to buy medicine, these people deserve to be seen. We all do. With each word, Sarah saw new life flicker in her audience's faces. Some nodded, others murmured softly, and a few even stood a little taller. That flicker expanded, igniting something in the collective heart of Crestview. As the meeting continued, stories began to pour out, raw and authentic. The single father spoke of sleepless nights spent worrying about his child's future, while an elderly woman recounted her years of hard work that seemed to amount to nothing now. Their voices mingled, forming a powerful chorus, and Sarah felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. Here was the hope she sought, a genuine connection that pulsed through their shared pain. Yet there remained a palpable distance between Sarah and her brother. He clenched his jaw, arms still crossed. It was evident he struggled with his own reservations. As the discussions deepened, Sarah risked a glance at him. She searched for understanding, a sign that he was thawing, but his steely gaze remained locked on her. Just as she feared the silence would reclaim the room, he spoke again, this time quieter, almost vulnerable. Do you really think you can change anything, though? Sarah took a deep breath, confidence surging through her. Yes, I do. But I can't do it alone. The moment seemed to stretch forever, the weight of her brother's disbelief still heavy in the air. Would he finally join her cause? Or would their familial divide deepen just when she thought she was building a bridge? Before she could answer her own questions, she turned to the crowd and took a hopeful step towards them, arms open wide. We need to make a plan. A plan that lets Crestview shine again. But amid the rising excitement, her heart trembled with uncertainty. What if her plans fell flat against the jagged walls of reality? As the crowd erupted into cheers, Sarah felt a stirring within her, possibility tinged with fear. Could her courage reach her brother? Or would the light of her renewed spirit dim under the weight of his doubt? Just as the energy hit its peak, a stranger in the back shouted, "What's the first step?" The question hung palpably in the air, leaving Sarah breathless and pondering. How could she answer when uncertainty still loomed over her own heart? The clock was ticking, and in the stark glow of awakening hope, Sarah knew the next chapter of her struggle had just begun. The crowd was buzzing, hands clapping and voices rising. It was exhilarating, yet Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She hadn't expected someone to demand an answer so quickly. The spotlight was on her, and doubt wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. Finding her voice amidst the whirlwind, she took a steadying breath. We can start by forming smaller groups. We can discuss specific issues, solutions we can implement together. I want each of you to feel heard and valued. A few heads nodded, eyes glimmering with a mix of hope and skepticism. But her brother remained silent, his expression unreadable. We need to focus on what each of us can do in our own lives, she added, glancing at him, willing him to engage. Change starts with our individual actions. A middle-aged woman raised her hand, her voice trembling. What if we fail? The vulnerability in her question struck a chord. Failure is a part of growth, Sarah shot back, feeling a surge of conviction. Every misstep teaches us something. If we stay silent or isolated, that's the only real failure. The applause grew louder, and Sarah felt a current of encouragement pushing her onward. Let us commit to this. We can create committees for different community needs, food support, health awareness, youth programs, anything we feel passionate about. A young man stood, excitement dancing in his eyes. I can help with organizing a food drive. We can get local businesses involved. Yes. That's the spirit. Sarah exclaimed, feeling the fire of unity blaze brighter. And if anyone needs help with their ideas, we're all here to support each other. As more voices joined in, the momentum shifted the atmosphere from one of doubt to collective enthusiasm. Sarah felt lighter, buoyed by their hope. Still, her gaze wandered back to her brother, searching for signs of change. Finally, he uncrossed his arms, his brow furrowing in thought. What's to stop these projects from fizzling? What if we don't have the resources? His tone was softer, almost hesitant, but still laced with caution. Resources come from passion. Sarah said, her heart quickening. If we're driven, we'll find a way. Let us hold each other accountable, celebrate the victories, no matter how small. But you need to be realistic, Sarah, he started, but his voice faltered. I am realistic, she countered, feeling the momentum of the crowd. Change is slow, but together we can face every obstacle. Do you see them? She gestured to the gathered faces, now lit with purpose. This is their fire, too. Before he could respond, the crowd erupted into cheers again. It was infectious, and even her brother seemed to be wrestling with the currents of the moment. Slowly, he was starting to soften. As the night wore on, ideas flowed freely. Groups formed and began identifying their passions, connecting over shared dreams. The energy in the room rose to a fever pitch, and Sarah could barely contain her joy. They were no longer sitting in silence. They were alive with potential. Yet, late in the evening, as discussions dwindled down and plans began to solidify, a familiar darkness began to creep back into Sarah's thoughts. It wasn't a question of whether they could come together for a cause, but whether they could keep that fire alive in the long run. Would they still feel this charge tomorrow, or next week? Sarah watched as families embraced, as hope mingled with laughter. But as she turned back to her brother, the uncertainty wove its way into her heart. He met her gaze, and for a moment, a flicker of something passed between them, a spark of understanding, or a possibility, perhaps. Was he changing his mind? Sarah, he began, his voice thick with emotion, but just as she leaned in, ready to hear whatever he had to say, the fire alarms began to blare overhead, slicing through the excitement like a knife. The room shifted suddenly, confusion painting faces as people rushed to the exits. Sarah felt panic rise in her chest. What was happening? In the chaos, she lost sight of her brother. Would they all be okay? And what would her vision for Crestview look like in the aftermath? Wait, she shouted, trying to gather everyone, to keep them together, but the doorways overflowed. In that whirlwind of uncertainty, one question blazed in her mind: was this a setback or a chance to show the true strength of their unity? As she hurried to find her brother again, desperation fueled her determination. Would they emerge stronger, or were they about to lose everything? The alarms blared incessantly, drowning out the last echoes of laughter and brainstorming. Sarah pushed through the throng of people, hearts racing all around her. She could sense the fear in the air, could feel it tightening around her walls of resolve. Where was her brother? Daniel! She called, her voice urgent yet strained. She scanned the room, frantic faces all looking for an exit, for safety. In that moment, someone bumped into her, nearly knocking her over. "Excuse me," she yelled, recovering her balance. She felt small, like a tiny fish in a raging river, trying desperately to cling to something solid. The crowd was moving like a wave, and she fought against it, pushing forward. "Sarah!" A familiar voice cut through the chaos. She turned, wildly searching until she spotted her brother's face among the sea of panic. Relief washed over her like a warm tide, but it was quickly followed by dread. Not everyone was as fortunate. "Are you okay?" she shouted, closing the distance. He looked worried, scanning the exits as if trying to map out an evacuation route. "I'm fine. We need to get everyone out." His eyes were darting back to the crowd. "Are they all accounted for?" Before she could respond, another wave of people rushed past her, anxiety overwhelming. "We have to regroup," she urged, grabbing his arm. "There are still people who don't know what's happening." He hesitated but followed her lead. Together, they moved toward a small gaggle of confused faces. She took a deep breath, trying to sink into the calm she had felt only moments ago. "Listen," she called out, her voice cracking but determined to penetrate through the noise. "Everyone, we need to stay together. Follow us, don't panic." Her words seemed to grab a few people, and she saw them nod in acknowledgement. Daniel stepped beside her. "We can help each other if we move as a group." He was starting to take charge, and she felt a flicker of triumph. Yet, deep inside, doubt gnawed at her. What if they emerged from this chaos to find the spirit of togetherness shattered? What if this was more than a mere disruption, but a test of everything they had built tonight? The crowd hustled toward the exits, the volume rising as the panic grew. Everywhere, shoes scuffed against the floor, voices shouting directions that only muddled the air. "Stay close," Sarah urged again, feeling the urgency grow sharper. "We can't lose anyone." The weight of leadership pressed against her, and she could sense the doubt within her, but she pushed it down, softening the edges of uncertainty with fleeting hope. Through the exodus, Sarah felt the scratch of hands clutching her arm, the eyes of strangers locking onto hers. In that fleeting connection, she sensed the shared fear, but also an untamed fire, the same flame she'd ignited only hours ago. "Stay with us, we're almost there," Daniel encouraged, his own voice steadying as he led the way. Sarah felt a swell of pride as he took his role. They were working together. There was a plan. Finally, they reached the double doors leading outside. As they flooded into the night air, limbs heavy with adrenaline, the chaos began to settle. It was a stark change from the warm glow of connection they had only moments before. Now, they faced an uncertain future under clear starry skies. "Where do we go from here?" Daniel asked, breathing heavily. "What do we do?" Sarah looked back at the building, the gathering space, now darkened and looming. She felt the weight of the community behind her, unsure yet waiting. "We regroup. We don't let this break us. We figure out how to move forward together." The cool night breeze wrapped around them, offering a moment of solace, but she couldn't shake the feeling of what lay ahead. Would this incident pull them apart or draw them closer? What strength would emerge in the aftermath? As they began to organize themselves, Sarah reminded them all. "We still have each other, and whatever this was, we will rise above it. I promise." But deep down, she felt the dread coiling again. What if this setback would reveal cracks in their plans? In that chilling moment of uncertainty, second-guessing her resolve, she wondered just how strong they all could be. Would they stand tall together when the real storm hit? And in the shadows lingering behind them, a flicker of doubt loomed, whispering that perhaps this was just the beginning of something they weren't ready to face. The night air was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of earlier. Sarah looked around, noticing how the faces she had just moments ago felt so connected, now seemed distant and weary. There were shivers of fear, murmurs of confusion, and the sound of footsteps echoing against the pavement. "Is everyone all right?" Sarah asked softly, her voice trying to rise above the quiet chaos. She felt the weight of her earlier resolve beginning to fray at the edges. Daniel stepped closer, scanning the crowd. "We should check in with everyone, see if anyone's missing," he suggested. But even as he spoke, he could see the uncertainty mirrored in the eyes of the people around them. Anxiety hung like a fog, clinging to their hearts. "Yeah," Sarah said, swallowing hard. "Let us make sure we're all here together." They moved as a group, slowly realizing that each small action required courage, a flicker of bravery amidst a storm they couldn't control. With each face she met, she offered a smile, hoping to reaffirm their bond. A soft squeeze of hands, a reassuring nod, small gestures that felt monumental in the heavy air. "Hey," an unfamiliar voice broke through. It was Rachel, one of the attendees Sarah recognized from previous gatherings. I saw a few people running toward the back entrance, but I didn't know where everyone else went. That's good to know, Daniel replied. We should make sure to check there next. As they gathered everyone, the initial fear morphed into a collective determination. Eyes looked to Sarah and Daniel for direction. She felt something shift within her, a flicker of hope igniting as a silent unifying force swelled in their midst. The thought of being lost turned into the shared goal of survival. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the air, likely a fall triggered by the gust of adrenaline-laden confusion. The crowd jumped, eyes wide with alarm. Sarah's heart raced, fear clawing back at the edges again. Stay calm. She yelled, her voice cutting firmly through the panic. We can handle this together. Just keep moving toward the parking lot. After what felt like an eternity, they began to move again. But as they advanced, Sarah spotted a flash of red, her brother's jacket, but it was not Daniel. Her blood ran colder as she recognized it belonged to Jake, a friend from their group. He was crouched against a wall, an arm cradling his injured leg. What happened? She rushed over, her heart pounding with dread. Just twisted it badly in the chaos, Jake groaned, attempting to push himself upright. I'm okay, just need a minute, no time for me. But as Sarah knelt beside him, something sparked in her. We can't leave you behind. You're part of this team, and we don't abandon anyone. She glanced up at Daniel, who was just a few steps away. Help me get him, please. Daniel didn't hesitate. He was by her side, supporting Jake's other arm. Together, they hoisted him up, a united front against the rising tide of anxiety. With each step they took, she felt them stronger, a tether pulling them closer through the grit of uncertainty. After what felt like a small lifetime, they arrived at the parking lot. The chaos had settled outside to muffled whispers and the sound of sporadic sirens in the distance. The stars shone brightly, casting an eerie sense of calm over the scene. Let's call for help and make sure everyone is okay. Daniel yelled, breaking the silence. There was a renewed energy in his voice, and Sarah felt herself swelling with pride in her brother's leadership. And yet, as they fumbled with their phones, dialing for assistance, Sarah couldn't shake the sense that they had just skimmed the surface of something profound, something that would challenge them deeply. Suddenly, a shadow appeared at the edge of the parking lot. A figure cloaked in darkness stayed apart from the group, watching them. As panic rose again, Sarah's heart began to thump wildly once more. Who's there? She shouted, her voice trembling. The figure moved slightly, and just as a community thought they'd braved the worst, a new layer of danger unveiled itself. Stay close. Daniel said quickly, shifting protectively in front of Sarah. What if this night held even more challenges? What if they weren't done fighting yet? As Sarah looked at the figure under the harsh light, she couldn't ignore the feeling that they had unwittingly stepped into a deeper storm, a storm that promised to test their strength and unity in ways they never could have imagined. The figure stepped forward, emerging from the shadows. Sarah squinted, trying to make out the details. A low, steady breath escaped her as she recognized the familiar features. It was Max, the quiet guy from their friend's circle, but something was off. His shoulders were hunched, and his eyes darted nervously around the parking lot. What are you doing here, Max? Daniel asked, confusion etched on his face. Are you all right? Max didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced back over his shoulder, his expression filled with urgency. They're coming, he said, his voice shaky. I saw them. We need to move, now. A chill rippled through the group. Sarah's heart raced. The simple comfort of the parking lot shattered beneath the weight of Max's words. Who's coming? She managed to whisper, the question feeling heavier than her breath. But before he could reply, a siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. The bright red lights of an ambulance illuminated the night, casting everything in stark contrast. But instead of relief, a wave of dread rolled over Sarah. Had Max seen something more sinister? "Let me help Jake," Max said, rushing forward, his body tense as if ready to spring. "We can't stay here." Daniel shifted, trying to calm the growing fear. "All right, let us get everyone inside the ambulance. They'll help Jake, and we'll figure everything out from there." But Sarah could sense the growing tension in the air. Something about Max's tone gnawed at her. "Wait," she called, gripping Daniel's arm desperately. "What do you mean, they're coming? They're not just people, they're dangerous." Max's voice rose, his fear spilling out. "I saw them moving through the shadows. They were looking for." A sudden crash echoed behind them. Sarah whipped around just in time to see several figures vaulting over a nearby fence, clad in dark clothing with masked faces. Panic erupted, the crowd surged backward, a wave of fear that threatened to pull everyone under. "Run!" Daniel shouted, instinct taking over as he grabbed Sarah's hand. The group rallied together, instincts overriding their previous moments of hesitance. They were running now, unity forged in adrenaline. Each step whispering determination, each heartbeat echoing a shared resolve. But as they sprinted toward the alleyway that led to the street, the shadows followed. The figures moved like shadows themselves, swift and silent, closing the gap. Sarah felt a mixture of fright and resolve. She couldn't look back, but she could sense the presence behind them, as ominous as the night itself. "Up ahead," Rachel called, pointing toward a small door that led into the side of the building. "We can hide there." Without hesitation, they veered toward the door. Sarah's pulse quickened as they squeezed through, the musty smell of old wood and rust filling the air. It was dark, the faint glow from the parking lot fading just as quickly as their sense of security. "Are we safe?" Jake's voice strained, still leaning heavily against Daniel. Max shook his head, panic etched across his face. "No, not yet. They can find us anywhere. We have to keep moving." "Then where?" Sarah pressed, her heart thumping wildly. His eyes flared with urgency. "If they're following us, we need to go deeper into the building. There's a way out. Trust me." Trust. It was a word that felt heavy hanging in the air. But as they exchanged glances, she saw it in the eyes of her friend's hope amid fear, a bond formed of shared experience. "Let us go," she said, her voice firm. They moved deeper, the darkness swallowing them whole. With every step, she grappled with the eerie sensation that this was only the beginning. What awaited them in the shadows? As they stepped into another hallway, Sarah realized they weren't just fighting for survival now, they were igniting a fire within, a revolution of strength against the unknown horrors that lay ahead. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the walls, shaking the very foundation of their refuge. The pounding heartbeats faltered as they turned to face the sound. "Is anyone out there?" shouted a voice from the shadows. Filled with tension, an unmistakable challenge echoing through the emptiness. What now? Sarah thought, her heart dropped. Would they face new allies, or had the darkness found them again? "Who is there?" Max shouted, his voice a strained mixture of fear and determination. The hallway, dimly lit and oppressive, felt like it was closing in around them. Each second stretched thin, a tense silence filling the air, hanging like a heavy shroud. "Please. If you're friendly, say something." Rachel's voice quivered, her eyes wide, reflecting the dread that gripped them all. They huddled together, their breaths shallow in the darkness. "Just answer." Daniel barked, irritation bleeding into worry as he shifted Jake's weight. Jake groaned, clearly still feeling the pain from whatever injuries he had sustained. Like a slow unraveling, the tension broke when a shadow moved. An imposing figure stepped forward from a recess in the wall, illuminated by the fleeting light from the exit sign. Sarah's breath hitched. They were strangers, but the frame looked menacing, their form cloaked in darkness. "We mean no harm, just listen," the figure urged, hands raised in a gesture of peace. As the others steadied themselves, Sarah caught a glimpse of the stranger's face, a young woman, maybe a little older than them, with striking green eyes that glimmered with an urgency. "Trust me, we don't have time to argue. They'll be here any minute." "Who is they?" Max demanded, his voice growing steadier but still edged with panic. "They're coming for you. For all of us." The woman replied, stepping closer. Her demeanor shifted from frantic to resolute. "You can hide here, but it's only a matter of time before they find this place." "Then what do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she felt the weight of the decision. The shadows were creeping ever closer, an echo of uncertainty cloaked in adrenaline. "Follow me. There's a bunker downstairs, an old storage room that leads outside." The woman pointed toward the far end of the hallway, her urgency palpable. Without a second thought, Sarah glanced back at Max, who looked twitchy, his instincts battling between fight and flight. She nodded, they needed to put their trust in her. Daniel tightened his grip on Jake, determination setting his jaw. "Let us go," he urged. They moved in a hurried silence, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet beneath them. The woman led the way, pausing only briefly to check behind them. Her eyes darted, alert for any sign of their pursuers. Just as they reached the end of the hallway, a loud crash echoed through the building. Sarah's heart sank. The darkness seemed to pulse, alive with the promise of danger. "Faster!" the woman hissed, her voice urging them on. "We have to keep moving before they block the way." The group followed her down a set of narrow stairs, the air colder and more oppressive the further they descended. A flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead. At the base, the woman swung open a creaking door to reveal a small room, cluttered with dust-covered supplies and equipment. "This is it," she said, stepping inside. "We can't stay out here." They crowded into the cramped space, Sarah's pulse racing as she pressed against the wall. "What is your name?" she asked, wanting to ground herself in the moment, to know the person who might hold their chance for survival. "Lila," the woman replied, taking a deep breath. "And I'm here to help. But we need to stay quiet." A sudden thud reverberated through the ceiling above them, followed by distinct voices echoing a group searching. The shadows loomed larger in their minds, a reminder that their refuge might just become a tomb. Sarah's heart raced, and she felt the weight of dread settle deep in her gut. Just when she thought they might have a moment of calm, the looming reality hit her like a freight train. "Lila," she hesitated, gripping her friend tightly. "What are we up against?" Lila's eyes darkened as she took a breath, preparing to share the truth that seemed to hang in the air like a heavy cloud. "What I'm about to tell you, it changes everything." In that moment, Sarah understood whatever was out there, they were all tangled in something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. Before Lila could speak again, another crash shook the walls, and Sarah felt the floor tremble beneath her feet. As the others gasped, she realized they needed answers fast. Would the truth push them even further into danger, or could it be the key to their survival? "Listen carefully," Lila said, her voice barely a whisper, intense and urgent. "There are people out there, not just people, something worse. They're hunting everyone who knows about what happened. If they find us, there's no escaping." "What happened? What are you talking about?" Sarah felt the edges of her reality fraying. Fear gripped her throat, squeezing too tightly to breathe. Lila hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as another loud crash echoed from above. Just moments ago, there was an experiment gone wrong. It released something. Shadows. Creatures. And they're looking for survivors. People like us. Max's face paled. "Creatures? Are you serious? We don't have time for this." Daniel interjected, keeping Jake steady as he shifted on his feet. "We need a plan. The bunker is a good start, but it's not safe here," Lila insisted. "We can't stay. The door upstairs won't hold for long." The tension in the tiny room grew thicker, tight as a coiled spring. Jake's labored breathing punctuated the silence, reminding them of their urgent need to act. "Wait!" Rachel cried out suddenly. "What if we wait until it's quiet?" "I don't want to run blindly into the dark. Every second counts," Lila said, her voice sharp. "They're not just hunting, they're systematic. If they catch a whiff of where we are, we're dead. We have to move now." "Then what are we supposed to do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Lila took a deep breath as if steeling herself for what was next. "We'll find the access tunnel behind the old supply shelves. It leads out to the back of the building. The perimeter is less fortified there. From there, we can regroup and figure out what's next." Max frowned, reluctant but realizing they had no other choice. "Fine. Let us do it. Carefully." As Lila gingerly pushed aside the dust-covered supplies, uncovering a doorway hidden between shelves, Sarah's heart raced with an unvisioned blend of fear and hope. The passage looked dim, barely lit by a single flickering bulb. "Once we're out, stick together," Lila instructed, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her unease. "Whatever you see, don't look back." The group squeezed through the narrow opening, the scent of mildew and old wood saturating the air. Each step deeper into the tunnel felt like a step away from the light of their former lives. "Are we really doing this?" Rachel murmured, her voice quaking. "We are," Lila assured, glancing back at the group, the fire of determination igniting her striking green eyes. "We don't have a choice." As they moved as quietly as possible, light faded further behind them, shadows creeping in to take its place. They curled their bodies as tightly as they could, the walls of the tunnel pressing in like the suffocating embrace of fear. Suddenly, a loud scraping sound jerked them to a halt. Lila raised her hand, signaling everyone to stop. Sarah's heart hammered. Was it just their imagination, or was it something more sinister? "What was that?" Daniel whispered. "Nothing. Just stay still," Lila urged, her voice low and steady despite the tremors in the air. In that heart-stopping moment, Sarah felt the weight of everything hang over them, the fear, the uncertainty, and the growing realization that whatever they were running from was far more terrifying than they could have imagined. "What if we don't make it out?" Rachel asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lila turned then, her gaze firm yet empathetic. "Then we fight. Together." As the silence returned, filled only by the sounds of their hearts pounding, Sarah understood that their bond might be the ultimate weapon. They needed each other now more than ever. But would it be enough? Before she could dwell on that thought, another crash echoed through the tunnel, shaking the very ground they stood on, and a panicked realization washed over them: they might not have much time left at all. With fear clawing at their insides, they pressed on, knowing the darkness behind them was relentless and the path ahead uncertain. What awaited them outside could either be freedom or their worst nightmare. Would courage carry them through to safety, or might they uncover something far worse than they ever feared? The scraping noise echoed again, louder this time, sending shivers down Sarah's spine. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, grounding herself in the reality that they were still together. Lila continued to lead the way, her determination fierce, but Sarah could see the cracks starting to form in her facade. Fear was settling in for all of them. "Keep moving," Lila hissed, her voice clipped. It was a command, not just a suggestion. Each heartbeat thudded in Sarah's ears, reminding her how alive she was, but also how vulnerable. The narrow tunnel twisted and turned, each corner lifting the tension like a taut wire ready to snap. They pressed forward, hearts racing with every second that ticked by, fueled by the desire to escape whatever hunted them. "What if it finds us?" Rachel whispered again, her voice breaking the silence like a glass shattering in the quiet. "Shoo!" Lila replied harshly. "You need to be quiet. We're almost there." She tried to inject hope into her voice, though it felt like a ragged breath escaping her. As they crept further, shadows flickered against the damp stone walls, their shapes unsettling and unfamiliar. Sarah struggled to keep her focus on the path ahead, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Each nuance of the darkness felt like an extension, stretching out to grasp them. "Stop," Lila whispered abruptly. The group halted, anxiety swirling like a storm around them. Lila turned to face them, her green eyes darting back toward the dark behind them, as if sensing something lurking just out of reach. If anything is behind us, I need you all to run. No looking back, just run." A knot formed in Sarah's stomach. "What about Jake?" she asked, glancing at her friend who was leaning heavily against the wall, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. "He can come with us. Just hold on to him," Lila said, her voice edged with urgency. "We'll take turns. No one gets left behind." Rachel reached for Jake, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. "You ready, buddy?" Jake nodded weakly, but Sarah could see the fear in his eyes, mirroring her own. Then, as if answering an unspoken question, there was a noise, a loud crash, then silence. But that silence felt wrong. It carried weight, dread hanging thick in the air. "Let us go." Lila's voice cut through the tension. They resumed their cautious pace, hearts pounding in sync. The tunnel widened suddenly, breaking into a small chamber. Dim light flickered against the walls, revealing an exit door at the far end, but their relief was short-lived. Sarah felt a chill run through her as shadows collected in the corners of the chamber, coiling like smoke, waiting. "Don't stop. Keep moving," Lila urged again. The urgency in her tone was unmistakable. As they sprinted toward the exit, Sarah looked back just once, the instinct almost overwhelming. It was a mistake. From the shadows emerged figures, grotesque and powerful, their forms stretching beyond what she thought possible, eyes glistening with malice. "No!" she screamed, freezing for a split second, the terror paralyzing her legs. "Run!" Lila shouted, snapping Sarah back to her senses. Adrenaline surged through her, and she pushed off the ground, every part of her pleading for survival. They barreled toward the exit, their breath mingling with panic. But just as they reached for the door, it slammed shut with a sickening finality. The shadows grew closer now, hungry and relentless. "Lila!" Daniel shouted, glancing over his shoulder, wordlessly pleading for a miracle. "Don't look back. Keep pushing." Her voice rang out clear despite the terror closing in. As they slammed against the door, adrenaline surged, but the realization crashed over them, they were trapped. Panic spiked, leaving them standing powerless against the darkness closing in. What was lurking right behind them, in the depths of the shadows? The walls of the chamber drew ever closer, and laughter echoed in twisted delight. "Whatever you do," Lila urged, "don't lose hope." In that moment, with shadows coiling and despair surrounding them, a realization emerged within Sarah. The group wasn't just fighting against their fear, they were on the brink of uncovering something powerful within. Could they truly tap into that might in time? As Sarah looked around at her friends, their faces stark with determination and dread, she felt a flicker of resolve blooming in her heart. They could endure this, whatever it was. But time was slipping away. What secret strength would they need to unlock before it was too late? The pounding in Sarah's chest synced with her friends' frantic breaths, urgency threading through them as darkness crept closer. The door loomed ahead, a symbol of hope and despair, and her heart raced with conflicting emotions. There had to be a way through, they couldn't let fear win. "Jake! Are you with us?" she called, her voice slicing through the chaos. "I'm here," he panted, leaning against Rachel for support. His eyes shimmered with determination, reflecting the fire kindling inside her. But shadows slinked closer, whispering of hopelessness. Lila glared at the door, her expression resolute. "We can't get stuck here. We need to find a way to fight back." "Fight back?" Rachel echoed, the tremor in her voice betraying her uncertainty. "Yes. We need to use what we have. The shadows thrive on fear, let us harness our strength instead." Lila's eyes swept across the group, her gaze fierce and unwavering. Strength? Max asked skeptically, fidgeting nervously. What strength are we supposed to have against that? He pointed shakily at the encroaching darkness, bubbling with malice. Sarah swallowed hard. We have each other. There's power in connection. Look at us. We've already overcome so much tonight. That's right, Daniel chimed in, gripping Jake's shoulder. Together, we're unstoppable. No shadows can tear us apart. As the oppressive darkness thrummed with anticipation, Sarah's heart surged with a wave of conviction. We've heard stories of struggle and resilience tonight. Let us draw on that strength. A ripple of agreement passed through them, igniting sparks of courage hidden beneath uncertainty. Heartbeats synchronized into a rhythm of resolve, binding them tighter together. Okay, here's the plan, Lila said, her voice steady. On my count, we push against that door together. We'll channel all our fear into strength. Whatever's out there can't overpower us if we stand as one. Together. The group echoed, nodding fiercely, determination igniting in their eyes. Now! Lila shouted, and in unison, they surged forward, pushing against the door. The wood groaned in protest, the shadows inches from them, threatening to swallow them whole. But they were united, a chain of hope tethered against despair. Sarah grunted, feeling the slick coolness of the door under her hands. She pulled together all her fear, her desperation, and transformed it into a spark of hope. Come on! She urged, her voice rising above the cacophony. We can do this. With one final, collective effort, they shoved the door hard. It burst open with a fierce crack, light flooding in like a sunrise breaking the dawn. They stumbled out into the night, exhilaration coursing through their veins as they broke free from the darkness that had held them captive. Beneath the vast expanse of stars, breathing in the fresh air felt like a rebirth. But their fight wasn't over. The shadows clawed at the edges, retreating only temporarily, eager to reclaim their prey. We need to move. Lila commanded, her eyes scanning the area for an escape route. This way. She pointed toward a glimmer of light in the distance. They bolted forward, feet pounding against the ground with newfound energy. Laughter and cheers mingled with their breaths, and something miraculous happened. The fear shriveled away, replaced by an electric current of freedom and hope. Suddenly, a low growl rippled through the air, halting them in their tracks. Sarah turned, nearly losing her breath. The swirling shadows re-emerged, seeming to shroud the night. But they weren't as afraid this time. Sarah stepped forward, determination radiating from her. You don't control us. She called out, her voice rising. We are stronger than you, and we will fight for our lives. The shadows recoiled, and a shimmering barrier formed around them, a flickering light born from their collective power. Sarah felt the warmth of camaraderie surge within her, an invisible bond strapping them together like an unyielding rope. Believe in each other. We can win this. With that, they surged ahead, the weight of fear lifting as they merged together in a show of unity. One strong front, battling against the fierce darkness. Run! Daniel shouted, leading their sprint toward the light. Behind them, the shadows writhed, desperate to reclaim what they had lost. They reached the clearing, and before them stretched the open road, moonlight bathing them in its silver glow. Keep going! Lila cried, exuberance mixing with urgency. Don't stop till we reach safety. They dashed forward, exhilaration spilling over, every step fueled by the promise of safety and hope. And as they crossed the threshold beyond the trees, feeling the night air settle, Sarah realized the shadows were beginning to fade. We did it! Rachel exclaimed, breathless as laughter erupted around them. We really did it! Though the darkness would always lurk, waiting for the opportunity to creep back in, Sarah felt their bond stronger than ever. They had gone through trials that could have crushed even the strongest spirits, yet together they emerged, alive, bathed in the glow of newfound strength. Together, Sarah whispered, a radiant smile breaking through. That's what this is about. Always together. Sparks of joy danced in their eyes, and they knew the fight for their community was just beginning. As they walked towards a future illuminated by unity, hope surged in their hearts. They would rise above the shadows, stronger for all they endured. The sun began to streak the horizon, and they stood together, hands joined, ready to face whatever lay ahead. And one truth remained: no shadow could extinguish the light of a united heart. Now, this is your moment. Don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the magic alive. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about the ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to support the channel and show your love. Now is the time.